Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site. And with me is my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, as we have episode 713. And, well, we're not previewing a game. It's our bye week for the Cardinals, and therefore we're going to do some mid-season grades. And with a 2-5 team, Seth, I'm guessing you don't have great grades for the different parts of the team, because I don't.
No, I mean, it's definitely been mostly disappointing from that aspect. And so, yeah, I mean, you just kind of look at it and you be, realistic with how the season has gone.
Yes. So 2-5. And I can't quite figure out, and I think it was Locked On Cardinals co-host Alex Clancy, or the guy that does the Locked On podcast, Alex Clancy, he asked the question, he's posted on Twitter, and he said, I can't figure out if the Cardinals are the worst good team or the best bad team. And I guess it comes down to this. They are the same mid squad that they were a year ago. And I guess that's kind of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and there was a couple people that are outside of Cardinals fandom that had similar thoughts, and you look at it from that perspective, and I can understand why people would be like, oh, it's not that bad, right? And you just look at all that and you go, no, it is that bad. And that's what the issue becomes, right? Is that you want to see more from this organization in general, and therefore when you're seeing similar or in this case potentially worse results from previous seasons, you can't be happy about that. Like it's a failure of a season thus far, and anybody that tells you differently, they're just flat out wrong, right?
Yeah, it's been a struggle, to say the least. So what we're going to do in this show, we're going to give grades to every position and the coaches. And so let's start with quarterback position. We've got Kyler Murray, who's 2-3, 6 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, been sacked 16 times, on pace for more sacks than he's had in quite some time. Jacoby Brissett, who started the last 2 games, 4 touchdown passes, 1 interception, 8 times in 2 games, but also hit 24 times. They're both completing a pretty decent, Kyler's at over 68%, Brissett's at 64.2%. The touchdown percentage is a little higher for Brissett. The interception percentage is a little bit lower for Brissett. But honestly, the 1.9% and 1.2% for Brissett really kind of matches their career marks. So I think we're caught in the moment of how the passing game has looked the last 2 weeks, and are forgetting what Kyler has done in different stretches. But honestly, I can't give the quarterback play higher than a C, right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. It's been a C, and the reality of the situation is it hasn't been good enough to win games at times, and then it hasn't been bad enough that it's lost any games. And that's for both guys, right? I know people want to look at it and spin things and go, well, it's this guy's fault that they lost, or it's this guy's, or the defense that this. It's like, no, like they're not good enough to win games, but they're not bad enough to lose games.
It's the problem. Like, the Kyler, we wanted to see more. So his level of play is disappointing, while Brissett, he's slightly exceeding expectations, which is why we're like, everyone's like, I've seen more from Jacoby Brissett. Like, you guys are forgetting that we've also got more than a year and a half of Kyler in this offense. And for whatever reason, this year just hasn't been the same. It's felt harder is basically it.
Correct. And that's, that's what the issue has become, is that it just doesn't feel like it's a successful or success based offense. And for that reason, it's become this problem every game. And there's no easy answers. And that's, something that we've talked about ad nauseum about just the Petsing offense in general, what they're doing and how they're doing it. That makes it really difficult to be successful continuously. So we'll see how that changes as the season progresses. But through 7 games, I don't think you can give it anything higher than that, right?
No, definitely not. Going to the running back position, which has been a revolving door. James Conner starting the year, getting hurt, and not honestly, he wasn't particularly productive in the 3 games that he played. Then Trey Benson, he's on injured reserve. He could be coming back here in the next couple of weeks. But what he has offered has been big play flashes. He's got 160 yards rushing. He's got a 52-yarder and a 29-yarder. And so basically 80 of his yards, half of his yards have come in 2 plays. And then it's not been particularly, it's been explosive, but it hasn't been efficient. And then Michael Carter, 2.8 yards per attempt. Bam Knight has shown a little something, but what this running back room was expected to be a strength of this team, and it has not been anything at all. I mean, right now, I think you can barely give it a D, but yeah, I'm gonna give it like somewhere C-. I'm gonna D+. Just because this has just been so far below expectations as a group, and part of it is simply the injuries.
Okay, injuries definitely play into it, right? But before the injuries, you mentioned it, there was no effectiveness or explosiveness in the game. I mean, there was a couple long runs for Trey Benson, but other than that, it's just been bad to terrible. Which makes it really difficult to give it anything higher than what it is right now. And so, this has been a trying season, and that's what the questions become. And, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, Clayton Adams. Look, I think extremely, extremely highly of Clayton Adams, and I don't mean this to come off as harsh as it's going to, but dude, you cannot tell me that an offensive line coach matters that much. Like, you're never going to convince me that, like, look, I can get behind it if we're talking about like new players, development, Isaiah Adams stinks. That's on the new. Okay. I can get behind that. But you're telling me that losing Clayton Adams, they don't even remember how to block?
Right. That's the thing that's weird. And here's the thing, because everyone's also pointing to the success offensively of the Dallas Cowboys. Let's not give that Clayton Adams has an important part on that staff. But let's be honest about this. Clayton Adams is the equivalent of Harold Goodwin. That offense is Brian Schottenheimer. Harold Goodwin was an offensive line coach with an offensive coordinator title because Bruce Arians was the play caller. It was Bruce Arians' scheme. And it's no different in Dallas. Now, I'm not saying that Clayton Adams isn't a good coach. Like, he was everyone here spoke very highly of him. And had he been able to stick around for another year, depending on what the decision is, because Drew Petzing's contract will be up after this season. We've seen that Jonathan Gannon isn't afraid to change guys on his staff. It'd be interesting to see how he does that with like his coordinators, because those are just guys. But perhaps he would have been an offensive coordinator next year, but that would also be a rookie type thing. Like Clayton Adams is an OC who is an offensive line coach, and Dallas is doing well. Their offense is very explosive, but they've had success with their offensive line for years. They have a greatly talented offense. And Brian Schottenheimer, my goodness, he's doing better than people thought he would do, that offense, but he's a lifer when it comes to offense. Like he's a legacy guy when it comes to offense, because he's Marty Schottenheimer's kid. It's honestly not really any different than the Shanahans, the Kyle Shanahan situation. Is like they've been around successful offensive schemes all their life. So there's a lot of questions I have about the offensive line play, which we haven't gotten to yet, the running game, but an offensive line coach and bringing in an offensive line coach who is very well respected by half of the offensive line room already, because he coached Paris Johnson, he coached Josh Fryer, and he coached John Gaines at UCLA. So I have a hard time with that. That said, running back room, bleh. I mean, injuries, like I hope for the sake of Kyler Murray and the offense that that Drew Petzing does not go back to what the play calling was with Kyler, at least the strategy. Yeah, you need to run the ball. You have to run the ball, but you can't make that can't be their identity anymore. And if they're gonna let Jacoby Brissett rip it, let's let Kyler rip it too, and see if he can do. And maybe that we will find out that Kyler has fallen off the cliff as a passer. I don't believe that's the case, but maybe like you put the onus on Kyler with the passing game, like they've done with Brissett, and you we're at the point, like, let him succeed or let him fail. And if that's the case, all right, maybe his best games are behind him, and that would really suck. But wide receivers, this is also highly disappointing, because Harrison hasn't produced on a great level. Let me crunch the numbers. So 396. Oh, it's good. 396 divided by 7 times 17. He is almost on pace for 1,000-yard season. So it's not horrifically bad, but it isn't as impactful. And Michael Wilson and Zay Jones and Greg Dortch are basically who they've been. Zay Jones already has more catches than he did all last season, and that's good. Michael Wilson's not even on pace, but the passing game with the wide receivers, at best C- at best, and that's a generous grade, I think.
Yeah, and I'd give it a C. I don't think it's, I don't think it's great, but it's not terrible. It's very average, and they've played in that way, and so that makes it really difficult to give it anything higher. I mean, but you're correct. It's disappointing, but I try not to let the disappointment of it dictate how I grade it. So, like, if I'm just grading it on how it's actually going from a efficiency, all of that nonsense standpoint, yeah, it's a C. If we're going off what we had hoped it would become, it's probably a D or an F, right?
Right.
So I think your grade is fair, by the way. Like, I don't think it's unfair. I'm just going to try to take this is the analytical route of things of like, oh yeah, it's not good. But also look at it as like, hey, it's pretty bad, but at the same time, like, it's bad in the sense of what our expectations were, not in the sense of the overall outcome of what we've seen.
If we look at the tight ends, Trey McBride is pacing catch wise, he's right on pace where he was last year. He's on pace for 114 catches. He's a little bit lower on the yardage. We haven't seen quite as much down the field, but he's on pace for over 1,000 yards. And I always say this: 1,000-yard season for tight ends are tough, especially when you have a wide receiver like Marvin Harrison, who's supposed to emerge. That's hard to maintain. So, but he scored 4 touchdowns, which we've gotten it off that fantasy problem that he's not a problem on fantasy. Tip Ryman done for the season. Travis Vokolek done for the season. Elijah Higgins is just fine. He gives you if you're talking about a number 2 tight end, he gives you a little more upside as a pass catcher, but he's not quite the block. He's an able blocker and he's a willing blocker, but he's definitely not Tip Ryman. It's a bummer that they've lost, that they've had so much attrition as they had, but I still, this group is worth a B to me right now.
If you're going based on just Trey, I think you would give it an A, but I think, yeah, like the room, obviously, again, you got to take some of the like, oh, these were the expectations, blah, 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 out of it. We also have to be like, okay, well, a lot of them can't even play. And is that their fault? No. Like, we don't want to blame the injuries on the players, especially, some of the freakness of those injuries. But at the same time, we
can blame Jacoby Brissett for killing Tip Ryman, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, we talk about this all the time. Like, you're graded by your availability, and their availability right now is 0. And that's made the room, overall probably a C plus, maybe a B minus, because you have, a top 3 tight end in the NFL. And then you have you and me. And we're working hard. We're not terrible by any means, but we're just, we're limited in what we can do. We're a little older, a little slower than what we would hope. So yeah, I mean, you look at it from that perspective, it's you definitely see the problems, and you realize that there's really just, realistically, there's just no solution, right?
No, it really, it's a struggle. Good.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and it goes in with the running backs and eventually even the offensive line that we'll talk about, then the defensive, like, investment doesn't guarantee success.
Nope.
And I think especially for our fan base, they look at it and go, I just don't, like, you drafted a guy in the 3rd round. Why isn't the position better? And it's like, well, that guy's dead. So that's why the overall position's not better. And you look at it from that perspective.
Yes. Coming up next on the Res of Sierra podcast, it's our Cardinals Talk on the Web. We've got more grades. We're going to go to the big guys. We're going to go offensive line, defensive line, and the edge. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Res of Sierra podcast. It's our Cardinals Talk on the Web. It is our mid-season grades show, episode 713, with the Cardinals on their bye week. Now we got to look at the offensive line, where you've got the starters. And I will say this. Who knew? Like, Paris, great. Jonah Williams at right tackle has been less than desirable. Evan Brown at left guard worse than last year, but not abysmal. Yilda Froholt seems to be playing at more of an average clip than a slightly above average clip that he was doing a couple of seasons ago. And Isaiah Adams was bad. And while the individual play of Will Hernandez, I guess if you look at grades, he's grading out really poorly. But for some reason, the addition to Will Hernandez to the offensive line unlocks something for the offense. Now, you can look at, like if you're looking at the two main metrics of the offensive line, you look at the run game, which is bad. And you look at pass protection, also not great. So they've given up 24 sacks in 7 games. That's more than 3 a game. Add to that the total of quarterback hits that Brissett has taken in each of the last 2 weeks. And even with the promise of Paris Johnson and even with the improved overall play with the addition of Hernandez, I guess the O-line for me is C-. And you're probably going to notice kind of a trend that with my grades, it's going to be very mid to bad because that's kind of what the Cardinals have been playing.
Well, I was going to say they're an average team, so average grades for average teams would make a whole lot of sense. You know, I look at it and you know, there are a couple things to look at. Obviously, one, again, expectation wise, not even within the realm of what we expected or had hoped for, right? And again, that, you know, whether or not it's fair, that was the reality coming into the season. We had expectations, and maybe that's on us, right? Like maybe as fans, we should go, well, there's still one constant, and that's what
we get for hoping.
Yeah, that's the owner, and so we deserve what we're getting, right? Like they're still not good, but you know, again, I this is never ever shade at Clayton Adams. Like I want people to understand this, but like I genuinely cannot, for the life of me. Again, it's different in high school and college, right? Because say you have your guys and then they graduate or go to the NFL or go to college or whatever, and they're gone. And now you're bringing in freshmen or sophomores, whatever, and the O-line coach leaves. That 100%, I get that. Like that's a teaching position. You're teaching these kids how to play. These are professionals, and outside of Isaiah Adams, there's not a single like newbie to the group that's never started NFL games. So I have a really, really difficult time being like, oh, they just suck because Clayton Adams is gone. Like that just doesn't jive for me. And you know, you and I and our buddies Blake and Johnny we're having a chat in our group chat, and the pressure numbers and those things are really interesting because I think a lot of people have put, and Kyler puts it on himself a lot of times, put the sack numbers or the pressure numbers on Kyler, right? Like, oh, you know, he's skittish in the pocket, this or that. But then you get Jacoby in there, who is literally the complete 180 of that. And you look at it and you go, oh, this offensive line is buns. And those numbers all kind of, that the struggles that we saw that people are willing to push off on the Kyler of like, oh, well, you know, he's just not good in the pocket. Like he's skittish, this, that, and the other. It's like, or they're bad. And he was doing enough to like take some of the pressure away from that, because the Cardinals, if you know, subscribe to these rankings, the Cardinals overall offensive line rankings have gone from 12 with Kyler in hand, pass protection wise, 12 to 18. That's 2 weeks, Jess. It's not like we're talking about, going from 12 to 18 after game, 5 to game 12, right? No, 2 games. The offensive pass protection has gone from 12 to 18. There's only, Will Hernandez, but I think everybody's like, oh, Will's doing a great job.
Yeah, well,
so
he's certainly not worse than Isaiah Adams, is what we've seen.
So the only change outside of the play calling, which we went over in the last episode, is the quarterback. And again, I'm not, naive enough, or I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh yeah, it's the quarterback, but there is something to the fact that you go from a guy that can extend plays and create with his legs to somebody that, can't really move. And now your line is being exposed, kind of being ironic that people wanted to put the blame, right? Like, oh, this, the line would be better with a quarterback that stands in the pocket and blah, blah, blah. Well, 2 games in, the answer is, So I would give him, C seems a little strong. C minus seems probably close, but again, if you take out the expectations and you just say that they're average, C minus I think is fair.
Okay, defensive line, which they threw so much. They've thrown so much on this defensive line the last 2 years.
I don't think there's a bigger overall disappointment than that, right? Because
last year, first round pick in Darius Robinson, big money to Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols. Then this offseason, bigger money to Dalvin Tomlinson, a first round pick in Walter Nolan, a good contract to Calais Campbell. And in fairness, Calais has not been a disappointment, and Dalvin Tomlinson has not been a disappointment. They, in their roles, have been solid. Calais has come down a little bit but we're getting close to the middle of the season. He's 39 years old, so we can expect that he's not going to maintain the same pace of playmaking. But outside of Calais and Dalvin, it has been very disappointing. It just in the fact of availability. Bilal, I'm shocked that he's back, but he's already he's a good guy to have on the line. The problem is that they signed him to be, because he for his whole career he's been a starting level, like a decent starting veteran defensive lineman, and now he's just kind of a rotational guy. Darius Robinson missed time. Walter Nolan still hasn't played. I wouldn't expect him back until Seattle. Technically he could come off this next week, but he's not practicing at all this week. So I expect them to wait till after the Dallas game to activate him. We won't see him till Seattle. Justin Jones hasn't played this year. LJ Collier's done for the year. I think for the year. Well, we don't know how long he's going to be out. And PJ Mustipher, in the role that he has, like the back of the defensive line room, he's been fine. But when you are expecting far more bodies and far more impact, now, in fairness, their run defense has been palatable, but they're not getting any sort of impact in the pass rush. Darius Robinson technically has a sack. I don't remember when that happened. Calais got 3 sacks. But what do you give this group? Because I guess the play hasn't been terrible, but it certainly hasn't been good.
No, man, and it's been disappointing at best and bad at worst, and that's the problem, right? Because you're talking about going into the season with this idea of like, hey, this is going to be the strength of your roster, and I understand again injuries, so like we take into account injuries and we go, okay, we gotta weigh the injuries. The injuries have been big this year. Um, so what would our grade be? And the reality, Jess, is that this group is at best average, and that's
Yeah,
genuinely at
yeah,
best.
I'd say that I'd give him about a C because, but yeah, it just feels disappointing because they're supposed to be better, but they haven't been an abject failure. It's just there's some like the run defense isn't terrible, although not when it counts. The pass rush hasn't been there, but you are getting good play from Calais and DT. So at least there's that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like you're getting good play from guys that you expected good play from in a very limited role, like maybe 30-35%. And they're playing that still. That's all they're playing. Maybe a little more, but not, I mean, they're not even playing 50% of snaps. We went over that the other day. And they're the only, again, this is strong to say it this way, but they're the only ones having major impact. Like that's the problem, right? Like that's what the issue is that you need more from all of these guys, not named Calais and Dalvin, or else this is just going to be a complete cluster, of a season.
Then we go to the edge. We go to the edge where you've got Josh Sweat with 5 sacks. You've got Baron Browning with 2, Zaven Collins with 1 last week. He had one really nice good rep.
Hell yeah, we're on the board.
But Josh Sweat and his 5 sacks came early. He's been impactful, but ultimately, I know this is boring, but this has been a very. I'll give him. He's not getting too much production. I think Sweat's sack numbers, which helps you get him up to, if he gets to double digits, which he's on pace to do. If he can somehow get to double digits, which he's pacing for, you feel really good about that contract.
You do. You feel great about that, and that again, this is the hard part, man. Like the hard part becomes, it's not terrible, right? Like it's not terrible, but we're tired of not terrible,
right?
And
right.
I
Well, then I mean, BJ Ojolari, I don't even know if he's really alive or if he's just
right. Dude, that was just all the Matrix. That didn't even happen.
Like, did the Cardinals actually draft a BJ Ojolari 2 years ago? Because I'm not 100% convinced at this point. And that's one of the puzzling things of this year, because the Cardinals will not. Well, and in fact, our favorite person, Mark Dalton, I think it was Teo Mackey, started asked if BJ suffered a setback in his recovery, only to have Mark Dalton interrupt the question, say this is the last one, completely derailed it to where that wasn't even the topic of conversation, because we expected BJ back by training camp. And then we looked at the moves they made off season, and it was 100%. They 100% treated this off season at the edge like BJ wasn't a human being in this room, because they go get Sweat. They re-sign Baron Browning. They draft Jordan Birch, and you're like, I forgot about Jordan Birch, who hasn't been terrible. But I mean, overall grade, is it enough to push it in the B? For me, it's not. I'm going to give him a C+.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of the worst. I shouldn't say it that way. Let's backtrack. They are decent, slightly above average at getting getting pressures, right? So like their pressure rate, I think is 19. I'm double checking my numbers here. Sorry, their pressure rate's 21. So not good. Their pass rush win rate is 12. That's where the number came from. But so their pressure rate's 21, which is not good. Their pressure to sack rate is really bad, Jess. 29. 29th overall. It's 15%, but 29th overall. Their sack rate is 4.2%, 28. So they are not bad at winning on pass rushes, but they don't create pressures or get sacks out of them.
That's
So
it's a great trait.
right. So
but in fairness, they do, like, Zaven is a perfect example where, like, you said it really well on social media. He was a guy that, probably wasn't worth a first round pick, but was definitely worth the second contract. He is, like, if you look at him as a player, if you ignored the lack of pass rush production, you'd say he's a solid starting caliber player, because there's so much he does really well. He's a very good tackler. He's so strong. He's great against the run. He really has found himself since moving to the edge in terms of coverage ability and effectiveness. And there's definitely the want to, but he just doesn't have the pass rushing juice. And that's kind of it. If that ends up being almost like the most important metric you get from the edge, like especially from fans, but he does so much else really well. But it's kind of indicative of that entire room. Baron Browning, I guess you could say this: they are getting their money's worth out of Josh Sweat. They're getting their money's worth out of Baron Browning, because he's like, if you looked at what he was for a couple of years at Denver, he had the potential to be a 5+ sack guy. He got 2 sacks almost midseason. You're pacing for about 5-6 sacks, and so, but yeah, still not ideal. This like the moves that they made, they were supposed to have an upgraded defensive line and edge room, and
it is. Here's the thing. It is.
But then attrition has really taken its toll.
But it is, in the sense that it's upgraded, but it's like gone from like 30th to 29th, or like 31st to 28th, or 23rd to 21st. Like, so it's factually better, but it's not good, and
certainly not good enough either.
Right. And that's what the problem is it's not good. So we're looking at it and going, yes, it is better. Technically it's better, but it's not good. And that's what the issue becomes.
Coming up next on the Res of Spirit podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. We're going to go back to we got one more section where we're going to talk about the linebackers. We're going to talk about the defensive backs, and we're going to talk about the coaches. That's coming next on Res of Red. We're back on the Rise of Spirit podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. We move to the linebacker room, where no Kaiser White, enter Mac Wilson, enter as the Mike, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Cody Simon. We got one really good game from Mac against the 49ers, where he played with his hair on fire and was fantastic against Christian McCaffrey, although McCaffrey, for some reason, had a bad case of the drops that game. But the linebacker room hasn't been good. Davis Gaither's not been great. Mac Wilson has. And what's tough is that Kaiser, who was really good in 2023 before he got hurt, last year was passable at best, and Mac is not an improvement over that. So this is what I'm thinking. Might give my harshest grade as a D+ for the linebacker room right now.
Oh, you're being way too kind, man. I'll go D, just because I'm trying not to be overly critical. But yeah, this has been bad and frustrating, because it goes to the line, the edges, like it goes to everything else being just okay, that they aren't even getting effective play from their backers. Like that's super frustrating, right?
Yeah, well, and it, guys, it goes hand in hand. They upgraded the edge, they upgraded the defensive line, and we believed that those upgrades would make it so that Mac and Davis Gaither would be more than enough. And you've talked about it a number of times on this show, is how Jonathan Gannon, how Monty Austinford, how they value that position. And it's really kind of, put people in front of them, and you get guys who can just be fine. And that's good enough from that group. But they haven't even been that this year. But you can also point to the fact that they have not been dominant up front. I think that's what they were banking on, being near dominant up front, and then where you've got a couple of athletic, clean linebackers who can just clean up afterwards.
Yeah, and they're just not getting that. And again, we're talking like 9 levels above anything I'm involved with. So I don't mean this to come off as flippant, right? But when we're going and through and grading and talking with our linebackers a lot, right? One of the things that we see so often is that they're bad on their reads. And what I mean by that is there was a great example of Josh Jacobs' touchdown where Jacobs, or where the D line forced a bounce, and you're like, this is ideal. Like Dalvin Tomlinson, I mean the A+ play on the play would have been Dalvin Tomlinson getting through the line and making the tackle for a 3-yard loss. That's the A+ play. But Dalvin Tomlinson had like an A, B+ level play because he got through so quickly and forced Josh Jacobs off his landing spot or his aiming spot, excuse me, as a runner, and forced him to bounce and move it. And so theoretically, right, like as a coach, you go, okay, well, your linebacker should be scraping and filling to the same landing spot. So then he would have been able just to go and bounce into the route that Jacobs took and get a tackle at the line of scrimmage, maybe a 1-yard gain, right? Very minimal gain on a second down play. And the result of the play was Akeem Davis Gaither never got downhill. He went lateral the entire time. And he went so lateral that he overran the initial spot, overran the new spot, and allowed such a big cutback lane that Mac Wilson, who took a decent angle, couldn't get there fast enough because it was so wide and it created such a cutback lane that even the backside backer, I mean, we're talking like you have to be Fred Warner in his prime level to get there. And so, that's the thing that you look at and you gain from that overall is that, man, that's just bad linebacker play. Like you said, like run, fill, clean up. That's what you should be doing. And instead you're getting guys that are making a lot of tackles, sure, because they're making tackles 7+ yards downfield. This is who's the guy that Jordan Hicks, right? Like this is Jordan Hicks 2.0, where you're like, yeah, Jordan Hicks leads the team in tackles, but his average depth of tackles 6 yards.
Ooh,
like
that's
if your linebacker's making a tackle that deep, it's a bad day. So all that to say, yeah, D+ is really, I'll give it a D+ as well because I'm trying to be nice, but yeah, that's a very it's a very kind grade of you, Jess.
Going to the defensive backs. I haven't hated the play of the defensive backs this year. Buddha has kind of been neutralized in many ways.
Frustrating,
Because
right? Frustrating to see him not playing at a high level, and you wonder if it's
no,
just that time. We talked
I
about
think
this.
it's more than anything is that they're avoiding him. Like
Well,
offenses are actively avoiding him.
and well, what they're doing is they're actively avoiding him in the run game, and they're going after him in the passing game, which is something
Yeah.
we haven't seen previously. But there must have been something that came up on the film that teams are like, oh, he's a step slow right now.
Yeah.
And so that's just disappointing. But you and I talked about that before the season even started, right? When we had the discussion about guys like him and Tyrann Mathieu, right? Like at the end of the day, literally you can take absolute zero away from these guys. They are warriors, they're all pros, they're borderline Pro Bowl level play or Hall of Fame level players, excuse me. But when you're that undersized in a game of giants, in a game of just dudes that are all huge, it's a matter of time when you play the style they do.
Yeah, and Jalen Thompson has been
Fine.
Rabbit Taylor Demerson
What?
has been a nice playmaker in the limited role that he's had. Like he's got the 2 interceptions,
yeah.
He's got 5 pass breakups, and that's what he did at Texas Tech. Now, has he been perfect? No, he's definitely not. Like he's not at the same level as JT or Buddha. And if we look at the cornerbacks as well, the cornerback play hasn't been bad. Will Johnson has been very good. Got picked on with the flags a little bit last game. Max Melton's been fine. Garrett Wilson was playing well before he got hurt. And when they had to play Denzel Burke and Keitrell Clark, they had moments. And so if I'm looking at that whole defensive back room, despite the woes they have in the passing game overall statistically, and especially late in the game, I say the defensive back room gets a solid B-.
Yeah, I think we're understandably giving them a slight bump because of how young they are, and we're going, hey, it's a lot better than we expected, right? When Sean Murphy Bunting and then Starling Thomas both, went on IR or whatever Murphy Bunting's on to start the season, or before the season started technically, right? We went, oh, like don't get us wrong, we like Max Melton, we love Will Johnson and Garrett Williams, but it's still when you're talking about probably the hardest non-quarterback position to play in the NFL, right? Corner specifically. And so to see them playing at this high level, and it's interesting that, Will Johnson was the best rated rookie corner, unfortunately, until this last game. And he definitely had a bad game. It was what it was. I mean, these things happen, right? But overall, I think that you have to be pleasantly surprised with what you've gotten so far.
Yeah. And like we can look at the defensive failures they've had have either come due to the lack of lack of above average play up front, and also the injuries for a couple of weeks when they didn't have Max or Garrett Williams or Will Johnson. I guess Max ended up not missing any time, but they didn't have Will, they didn't have Garrett, and so then you're leaning on Keitrell Clark and Denzel Burke. Clark, who made a couple of plays, but he also was the one that gave up that monster pass to. He was the one who got picked on by Seattle. Calvin Ridley too. Oh, it was JSN and the Calvin Ridley. Oh my gosh. So he made some game-saving plays against Carolina, and then after that. Finally, we'll do specials and coaches. Like honestly, special teams has been solid. I'll give the special teams a solid B+ so far. We had the one botched kickoff, but Ryland's been good. The combination of Blake Gillikin and Pat O'Donnell have been fine. They've made some plays in the return game.
I wanted to ask you real quick about the Ryland thing because we didn't address this and I completely spaced it. That's on me. After last game, do you put the end of the half situation on Ryland or Jeff Rogers?
I put that on the coaches because
are they the ones? And I'm genuinely asking, because I don't know. Are they the ones dictating where he needs to kick the ball?
I would have to say so. Like when you've got a young kicker, like you've got your that's and JG said as much that was his call. Like whether he's covering for someone else, but his call was okay, boot it out the back of the end zone. So I have a hard time believing that Chad Ryland's making
calls,
making kickoff calls, that he's just doing what he's asked to do. And in the case of the one kickoff that fell short of the landing zone, which ended up in the loss, that was called, because they tried to do a squib, and squibs are highly unpredictable. You don't know what they.
Well, yeah, the squib one I'll never get upset about, because unless it's something that you've done 3 or 4 times already in the game, it's asking a lot, right? Like it's asking a lot. But the other ones, yeah, like that one specifically, I was kind of curious what your take on it was, because it just was such a bad look, right?
It was so Cardinals. Like it was such a fourth quarter Cardinals play when they needed this, and it's just they just botched something else. So they botched defense, they botched offense, and oh wait, now we botched on special teams as well. But I've been, the special teams have not been the problem, and so for that I'll give them a solid B, because
the special teams have not cost them a game.
Coaching, though,
maybe Seattle, but that's a very, I don't, again, I don't ever like to do that to kickers and things like that, because like you said, are they the ones making that call? So
yeah. And then now we go to the coaches, which I don't give them an F, because look at some of the teams around the league. Like the Cardinals are 2-5, and record wise that puts them on par with the Giants and the Saints and bad teams like that. But their losses are by a total of 13 points. And so you know that the 2-5 is it's a deceptive 2-5. They're a better team than 2-5, but their record is what they are. And we've talked about it, is when you consistently lose close games, that's a coaching thing. When it's over and over and over, that's a coaching thing. And so, Aaron Glenn and the coaching staff over there with the Jets, they get an F. And I see Aaron Glenn, and anytime they make a hire like that, I'm like, I'm going to have to remember that. He reminds me of a mix of both Steve Wilkes and Mike Singletary, two highly respected assistants.
And successful.
And yes. And who their hirings were lauded universally, only to fail spectacularly. It's really disappointing to see. But Aaron Glenn fits he's Steve Wilkes and Mike's. He's a little bit Wilkes and a little bit Singletary because of the stuff that he says. But so that's a failed job out there. Obviously, I'm not gonna say that the coaching staff gets a failing grade, but it's somewhere right there at D and D-, because and Jonathan Gannon is not immune to this. Like, everyone's talking about that, and the reason why people don't blame Gannon more for it is because he has strategically avoided being the play caller. So he's not the defensive play caller. He's not the offensive play, like a lot of, coaches are, head coaches are in the NFL. And so you're looking at the play calling of Rallis. You're looking at the play calling or the scheme of Petzing, when 100% the reason they are, like, the schemes and play calls are influenced by Gannon's philosophy. We've talked enough about Drew Petzing on this show. I felt coming into this year that Nick Rallis should have more pressure on him because he is a darling around the NFL because of his creativity, whatnot, and his mentality as a defensive coordinator. But the fact of the matter is that in 2023 and 2024, he had a bad defense. Now, he had a badly manned defense, talent-wise. And this year, they added the pressure of putting a lot of money and capital into it, only to not be clutch. Like, so they're good until they need to be. And so, like, the coaches overall, I mean, it's between D and D minus. I'm not going to give them a failing grade, but they're definitely not. They are definitely perhaps the main catalyst for this over and over loss thing. That's when I kind of think is they're kind of main contributors to the problem. Obviously, the players make the plays on the field, but I don't think the coaches are doing the players any favors.
No, and I look at it, and I look at this as you can break it down and even further. I would give Rallis a D because of all the new toys he was offered. I was going to give Petzing a C until the last 2 weeks, and I know people are going to be like, well, you're just making excuses. No, again, when you break down the numbers, the way that he's called games differently for the two quarterbacks tells me that he is not utilizing his assets in the best way. And so, again, unless somebody can give me proof that Kyler is in the meeting, be like, I don't want to run that play. I'd rather throw another screen.
Yeah, I want to throw a screen. Let's run the ball more.
Right. Like I want to see that, and so that's how I look at that. So I'll give Petzing a D as well, but I would genuinely give Jonathan Gannon an F, and here's why. So here's why. You're in charge of everything. You're the guy, and the buck stops with you. And so if your OC is telling you, well, my offense doesn't work with our highly paid quarterback, then your offense is the problem. Okay. And that's just the reality. If your offense, if you're saying like, oh, well, this guy runs it better. Okay. Well, then what in the offense can you adjust to make it function at a higher level? And then defensively, like you said, why are we in 7 consecutive weeks? Why are we failing in the fourth quarter for 7 straight weeks?
and it's without fail. They're without failing, and the only reason they didn't lose to Carolina and New Orleans is because, one, New Orleans is bad, and Carolina, they just built a big enough lead that they almost couldn't lose it. But they tried.
Right, exactly.
And they tried to lose it.
So, yeah, so that's the thing is like, the coordinators are doing their thing, and maybe, like you said, at the behest of Jonathan Gannon. And so then at that point, like the failure of the season, 2-5, yeah, even though it is by 13 points, is because of the coaching And here's the thing, you know, I rarely, if ever, wade into the comment section at the site, because I don't think it does anything. But there have been multiple comments that I've bit my finger, I guess, so to speak, and not typed out, like, well, the players have to make plays. Well, if after 7 weeks the players are not making plays, then either change the players or change the scheme. Like, you can't just keep running it back and being like, well, the players just aren't making play. Well, then it's not working. So what do you do? Like, what is your response and how do you fix it? And to me, that's the biggest failure of this franchise right now.
And that makes sense. And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast, best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. That wraps up our 2 shows this week. We don't have a game to review, so what we will shoot for are 2 late week shows where we preview the Cardinals Cowboys, and then I will try and get Katie Drummond from Cowboys Wire or another Cowboys analyst to preview that game. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be red, see red, and of course, Rise up, see red.